Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga and wellness world and what we've been coaching our clients through. I'm Carol. I'm here with my lovely group of coaches, Bridget, Terry, Shannon, and I believe Josh will be joining us shortly. Little switch up today. We usually talk about firing your staff, but what about firing your clients? This
Good
is something
one.
that's come up recently, and I think I'm going to throw it to Bridget. She was talking about this before we started recording. Take it away, Bridget. What's going on?
Sure. Yeah, I've just been seeing this pop up in just like a few like little groups I'm in of other studio owners. And I have had plenty to share. I have fired clients before. I'm sure. Have we all fired clients before? Yeah, of course. Yeah. I've done it twice, and I just am sort of shocked sometimes. This has come up a lot in different groups I'm in. It's come up with my own clients here at Artha. I'm always just a little bit shocked at like how crazy the story can be, and the studio owner is still like, so what should I do? Like, should I let them go or should I not? And I'm always just like, what? Email them right now. Tell them they are never allowed back. Refund them whatever, and never read any of the texts or emails they ever send you ever again. So I just think, yeah, there's just, I guess the question I have for all of you is like, where's the line? Where is the line? I think it's obvious when things are over the line, but what about like what's going on when things are on the line? I'm happy to share my stories of the times I've fired clients, but I would love to hear your guys's too. Um,
Well,
and yeah, and I guess what's the importance of like why do this? Is it just because we're sick of them? Like why is it so important to know when to pull the plug and when not to? Terry?
I think pro tip, practical tip, the first place to start is, do you have a code of conduct? So you're the one that defines the boundaries, right? Obviously, sexual harassment should be non-starter, period, end of story. And in your code of conduct, I would if I were to do this again, I would specifically state in my code of conduct, our teachers, our staff are professionals and are not allowed to date clients. I would actually put, and conversely, I would have something, yeah, snap, snap. I would have in my employee code of conduct that that's also the case, unless and they both sign a document, right? And it's become a huge, and I don't care whether you have 10 employees or 500 employees. It's people with people. So I think that the best place to start is, what is your code of conduct, and have that written in your waiver, right? That we will not, these are our code of conduct. We will not tolerate sexual harassment and, any of those things. And if you have it clearly, it's kind of like your core values when you have, and you can align with your core values, right? And if you have that all in alignment, if someone, where that line is, and then I think it will make the decision a lot easier. I wish I had had this. And then it makes the decision really clear and really easy. And it will just, you have it laid out specifically. I mean, and part of me is like sad that we have to resort to something like this, is that people can't just treat everybody with dignity and respect and understand certain things, but unfortunately we can't. So, we have to have these things. I always like to say, you know, laws and things like this are basically for the 99% of the population who abide by the rules. We need them because of the 1% who don't, kind of thing. Anyway, that's another thing. But that would be my suggestion first to start, is you decide it as the business owner, you decide what is the line. And yeah, so Shannon, I'll pass it to you.
I think I more or less have a question about, a situation in my studio because I have a chronically late student who has been told not to be late a million and one times and told that the class starts at this time and you need to be in the building at this time. And now she's in the building, but she's in the bathroom. So she doesn't get on her mat until 10 minutes later. And, then it's like we have to have the conversation of like, no, you need to be on your mat when the class starts. And I guess my question is for you guys, your studio owners like I am and were, um, where's the line? Like, this person really loves her practice and has a lot of, reasons to be there. So I guess that's my question for you guys.
Hey, Josh.
Hey,
I
Josh.
mean, it, that's where it's like, I know some studios have, once class started, you can't go in, right? Or we only let people in up to 5 minutes after class starts. So I would say if that's not defined, then you define it. And if they keep breaking it, just say, I'm sorry, you know, if this happens again, we're gonna have to, it's disruptive, it's disrespectful.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's definitely the move with that one is to just enforce, like, you don't necessarily have to kick them out of the studio, just enforce the boundary over and over and over and over again until they realize, oh, if I show up more than 5 minutes late, I'm literally not getting into class. And then they won't keep, and then they'll,
they'll either learn or they'll either learn or self-select. I mean,
yeah.
I've shared this before that right out of teacher training, I taught in Hong Kong. And, we had, I always like to say this, 168 classes a week on the schedule
Mhm.
with 4 studios going simultaneously. And that was hard. It was a hard rule. Once class started, nobody can come in because we had a class starting in a half an hour. Right.
Yeah.
But I still recall vividly and they would have the host or the front desk, whoever, whatever they called them, like the staff person would stand in front of the door and I would hear arguments going on, like practically knockdown, drag out fights. But that was just a hard rule. Once
Yeah.
class started, you couldn't come in. So I think if you enforce that, they'll learn. It's kind of similar, but not when I started charging no-show and late cancel fees. I was very specific about it. I did it. And then I had a client bitching about it. And she one month paid more in late cancel fees than she did in her membership. And after that, guess what? She stopped late canceling.
Yeah, for sure. I think one confusing place that I've been with clients of four, and what ended up happening was I did end up firing them, but it was the hardest part was the gray area before that, where it was like you kind of heard that she was a little bit snippy with your staff, but like the staff was also like, "Oh, it was no big deal." But then someone else was like, "Yeah, that was like really shitty." And then like it's like little murmurs you hear, and after that, you know, actually I don't know that it's really come up as much since then, but that is those are the hard gray areas for me, I think, where it's like you're like sensing a little bit of disrespect, but it hasn't escalated, and then it does escalate, and then you have to kick them out. Um, yeah, I guess what what do you think about like little infractions like that? Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah, Terry's writing in the notes incident report, which is we didn't have something formal for a while, but we would write notes in a client's profile. Like this happened on this date, these are their witnesses, this is what happened, like a full report in a way. And it was like just something to, obviously, if it wasn't a huge infraction, we weren't kicking them out yet, but it's those little things over time that if you can go back and like say, no, we have like 10 different places where you've done something that's like borderline. I think it's time to, if we haven't had a conversation yet, obviously we need to have a conversation first. Or is this a bigger, at some point we did have a full incident report type of situation added. And I think that's the hard part is like, sometimes it's not black and white. There are these gray areas. It's like, I didn't really realize. I remember one person we had to fire, client we had to fire. He took his wet towel after class, so it's sweaty. He rolled it up and snapped it on somebody, a female that was his friend. And we were like, how do I didn't know I needed to tell you not to do that shit. It's disgusting. It made other people uncomfortable, even though the woman he did it to was like, it was fine, but that was her personality. It's not fine. We told her, this is not okay. We had to tell her that too. Anyway, just those, it's funny how, yeah, there aren't always true. I can't write this all down to say if this happens, then you're kicked out because there's weird shit that happens sometimes that you're not prepared for.
Yes, a man's giant sweaty towel snapping at me is a hard no. Nope.
I think with the with the incident report and having an incident report is a great thing because that's where they write down the incident because again, people will people and one person might not think it's a big deal, but somebody else does. And if they feel it, write it down. And then those incident reports, either the manager or the owner, and then if it's ideally there should be a process for it. It's like it should be addressed right away. It's like, hey, just checking in. This was what happened. We just want to verify with you, just want to remind you so that there is consequences. It doesn't, and hopefully if it goes that way, then to your point, Bridget, it doesn't simmer and escalate and get more and more and more and more. And yeah, I think that's it, and it's hard. It's hard, definitely. So one person might not think it's bad behavior, and then depending. So that's where that, like you said, it can be very, very gray. And the other thing about an incident report, particularly if it's with another client or a staff member, it shows you're being proactive about it so that you're not allowing like a toxic work environment, things along those lines as well. That it's showing that you're addressing issues when they come up, and not just burying your head in the sand and hoping it'll go away. Hope is not a plan.
So how do you do it? What do you say you decide you need to fire a client? What is the SOP for that? I
Paul,
can do mine, but I was asking you guys. I
Pick
can
it.
tell you what mine is, but you go ahead, Carol.
Oh, well, I just, I would want to have a direct conversation. Usually, unless there was already communication going back and forth in an email, it would be a call or a face-to-face communication. This is what's happened. We don't allow this at our studio, for XYZ reason, whatever. You might not even need to address that. It could just be like, love that. Yeah, another reason for security cameras, Terry posted in the chat for sure. And I would always end with, I hope you find a studio that fulfills your needs. That was, yeah, like we're not the ones, but I hope you find a place that fulfills your needs.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an instance in our studio with a regular who, has claimed a spot in the room and a brand new person who had just, purchased an annual and had just fallen in love with us, set up in her quote unquote her spot. And one of the other students said, "Hey, so and so, you're not in your spot." And she turned around and said, "That's because somebody else is in my spot." And it was like, so I had to have that conversation with that client. Like, we don't have spots. And also, that's not our vibe. Like, we're not rude to new people. We're welcoming to new people. And of course, like the client understood and corrected her behavior immediately. But, yeah, having the conversation directly with them, you can't just bury your head in the sand. And it was an incident report. So I did address it. And I think, yeah, to your point, both of you, just just deal with it.
Yeah,
It's uncomfortable.
sorry, Sharon. Yeah, I've had both scenarios where it was appropriate to talk face to face. But I've also had scenarios where it's complete. I felt really good sending an email. There was one woman who purchased a 10 pack from us. She had been before, and she like literally nothing you could have written an incident report. She just rubbed me the wrong way. And she was a friend of one of my teachers who I did end up firing eventually because she was trouble too. And at the front desk, I wasn't there this time. She purchased this 10 pack. And the entire time she's in the process of purchasing this 10 pack, she is talking shit about me, about the studio. She said her friend teacher is the only good teacher. Her, meaning me, prices are ridiculous. Like just total shit. The front desk staff like tells me about it. And I refunded her 10 pack, sent her an email. I said, I don't think this is the right fit for you. Bye. And we all moved on with our life. And then other times I've had to stop someone outside the studio to be like, hi, you can't come in. You're not welcome here. I've already refunded you, blah, 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 blah. So I think there's time and a place for a good old email as well.
There's a few parts of these situations that are really tricky. I think you guys have nailed it already just in basically making the point that like you can do business with whoever you want to do business with or not. And the unfortunate part is this is the perfect example of when something's not your fault but is your responsibility. Yours rhetorically, yours being like it's the business's responsibility to do or say something. You can't control people, but if someone in the environment is doing something that should be addressed, like no one else is going to do it. So more often than not, your owner operator situation is going to be you, the owner, who has to do that. I think the two things on top of like or like the precursor to how do you do this? Have the conversation, send the email, whatever. And Terry, to your point, like everything should be, you need written record of everything. There should be an incident report. I think I would record everything these days. Like this is actually a trick that's happening in sales is salespeople are purposefully trying to get onto platforms and have sales conversations where things are not recorded. I've noticed that it's a really like janky thing that's happening because then they don't have any leverage against them, keeps them safe. I digress. The point being, record everything because then you have record, even if you don't do anything with it. But it's also for yourself, like to get to audit yourself. If things do go awry in a tough situation, then you can go back and look at it and be like, where did I screw up? It's not really about, being in a battle with them. All that said, the two things, and maybe I said this before I jumped on, one is always like, people do weird shit. The question is like, do you have to deal with it? Like, I think the first thing before that I find myself coaching towards a lot is getting really, really clear on is this something that should be addressed? Not from a like, oh, we avoid this because it would be uncomfortable, from a like, actually, what is the problem? And there probably is, but if your emotional reaction to something or someone's frustration or their behavior is such that it's like activating in some way, this is the example of defining the actual core problem. Like, what is actually the issue here? That this person likes their spot at Shannon's studio? Not really. But the idea that you're going to like put out a new student, like that's not inclusive. And that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to, like, it wouldn't be fair for me to stand here and idly by. From a yoga philosophical standpoint, just to throw this in the mix, it's like ahimsa, non-harming, doesn't mean passivity. It means not standing for harm or harm reduction, inclusive of if I'm watching you do harm and it's within my power to do something, it would not be in practice of ahimsa to stand idly by. And so, as the owner, like that's where this comes from. Someone's disrupting the whole thing. You got to step in out of principle, in my mind. But to that point, the couple of things that I feel like technique wise that are very easy and just completely negated are one, like if I have a hiccup with someone doing something in the business and I feel like it's crossing a boundary, what boundary? And what that might look like is like what Terry made a post in the Artha community about core values and like using that as the why conversation behind anything you're doing. This is one of those examples. Like, what core value do we have that is clearly stated and articulated that this is breaking? That's the boundary. Because by me stating that across my whole team, including like on my website, hey, here's our core values, even if that person never read it, public information, this is the thing to come back to. And it just clears it up instead of it being like, I like Carol, but she gives the stink eye to this teacher because she doesn't like it if we do 3 sets of push-ups and Pilates instead of 2. And like, I just don't think she's not that nice to me. But then she's been around for a while, and that one time she bought her friend with this like whole ruminating swirl of shit to try to unpack it. It's clear as day. Core value X, Carol Y, conversation. In a perfect world, that's how you get it set up. So when these things come up to me, the prep thing is what actually is the problem? what is like the boundary, core value, or principle of how we operate that is clear that I, want to use as the conversation prompt. Like the reason I'm talking to you, Terry, is because this. If that's not there, it gets really hard. So sometimes these situations are harder to deal with, and the lesson in it, the experience affords you growth around the realization that, like, oh, this is a problem, but I don't have this defined for myself or the team or the community. And so now this is a high tension situation when it could have been a really crystal clear situation. Um, and then the two other things, just to continue the ramble, is like actually prepare the message. The number of owners that go into a conversation like this, like really not well prepared, and I do mean like written out, have the page with you or whatever, it will save your ass if you do this. Because if your emotion gets triggered and you start word vomiting, like that's how you get yourself in real trouble. Um, and to that note, the two like very specific techniques that are situational, they're not always the case. One, in my experience, if you approach this with curiosity, you get to where you want to get to. So it's like, before I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong, I'm going to tell you why we're having a discussion, and then I'm going to be curious about what's happening for you. It's not the hear your side of the story. That's what I'm saying. It's like legitimately, hey, I'm reading the situation like this. I'm seeing this happening. That doesn't seem like it feels really awesome. Like, are you good? What's going, like, help me understand where you're coming from. Make it about them. Because often someone who's, quote, big quote here, misbehaving, because whatever that means, like there's some desire for it to be about them already in the misbehavior. So give it to them. Like, cool, I'll hear you out. I want to see you. I accept everyone here. Explain it to me. And that alone, it's like it doesn't even go further sometimes. They just talk to themselves for 2 seconds. They're like, yeah, sorry about that. And you're like, cool. See ya. End of conversation. And then the other piece of the puzzle is in business, more than other places, but this is everywhere with your staff, whatever. The idea that you need to be heard about how you feel about the situation, or that you have to somehow protect your dignity by over explaining yourself, or that you need to be right and convince the person who's crossed a boundary that they have convinced the boundary, all of that shit, delete. It doesn't exist. This is why the prep matters. Get real clear. This is the situation. Help me understand. This is the boundary. When boundaries crossed, this happens. Period. And because people then they'll try to, yeah, but they said this, but this other person that, but whatever. Stay the fuck out of all of it. Period. It will blow up in your face. There is no way. You're not smarter. You're not more charismatic. You can't convince them. You're not responsible for their emotions. You're not going to win entering the fight. Like you can't enter the fight at all. That's the only answer. And so that comes from the prep piece. That's what's coming up for me in these, because this will happen if you run a wellness business, therapy bit, like you're working with humans, like you will run into an incident like this. And the first one will catch you off guard. And so often I had to learn, I think everyone on the call too, as coaches, like we all learn this, but we learned it the hard way. You have a conversation with someone and you fuck it up. And then you're like, that didn't really take place exactly how I was hoping it would. Yeah.
Sometimes you throw inadvertently you throw gasoline on the fire. And yeah, like you were saying, that's a lose-lose situation. Another pro tip I just thought of, because we know Bridget loves pro tips, is this is all great and you should have it. But then the other thing you should also have is what happens. It could either be a staff member or a client where it physically, an altercation ensues and you have to call the police, right? What is the situation? How does that look? And one thing that I found, and I had, because I forgot what made me, it was probably hashtag Terry's dad. It probably comes back from my dad from years ago. But having, if someone's calling 911, and it could be a client, maybe it's a client who's calling 911, whatever it is, but at the front desk, have what is your physical address? Oh, you'd be amazed. Some people won't know what the physical address is. I just know it's here. You know, what is the physical address of the studio? Because oftentimes people don't necessarily know what the physical, particularly nowadays. And then if you're in an area that, like, I remember there was a studio in Rhode Island that was in one of those old mill buildings. It was Molly's studio, Shannon. Remember Molly? So it was on the third floor. You had to go up an stairs or an elevator. It was like you had to go down this long corridor. You had to go this way. You had to go this way. And in an emergency situation, it would be like, here are the directions to give emergency. It's like, we are on the third floor, go in the southeast, whatever it is. I know this sounds really like kind of weird. However, it could be the difference between, seriously, between life and death. If first responders have the appropriate, oh, I know, it was my sister, hashtag Lieutenant Leslie. She was a cop. It was my sister. Yes. Having the exact location for first responders can be, and just have it at your front desk. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I don't know. I go down these weird rabbit holes. What can I say?
No, not at all, Terry. I think this is totally related. What you're making me think of, like, this is really basic stuff it's almost so basic, it's so base principle that we forget about it now. Like, this is stuff when I was 15 in my second job or whatever. I remember getting orientation at the campground that I was working at from the guy being like, okay, so like here's the piece of paper that sits next to the phone permanently, and the other one here that sits next to the emergency stuff permanently that has all the numbers and the address and the info. And it's like, when in doubt, fucking phone 911 and here's everything you need. Like stuff like that. That was common practice conversation. And it's not even a thing in businesses now. We don't even think about this sort of stuff. And has the need changed? Is there a different, like, no, I don't think so. I feel like, but to me, what the bigger point of what that represents and how it ties into this context in a really powerful way is the idea of having like really simple frameworks, policies, principles, plans. If this, then this. You know, someone shows up at the studio and they're doing something that crosses the line of someone feels unsafe. Any one person's like, I feel unsafe. Here's what you do. There's not a question. Don't think about it. There's no interpretation. No, it's not different if Shannon's on versus I'm on versus Bridget's on. This is what happens. This, period, full stop. Those are the things that make your entire business and your whole team like stronger. And also then, just like everything else, if you have a system like that and then it doesn't produce the result that you want, you can adjust the system. If it's like, depends on who was on today and what the situation was, how do you get better at it? There's nothing to adjust. So, yeah, I think great example.
Well, I was going to add just another practical tip along those lines, like weather emergencies too, not just people emergencies. Like we had, if a tornado is barreling down, you know, the desk person is responsible for checking that out, getting the room into the bathroom. Like we just had all that figured out. And we also, in addition to having the studio's address there on a piece of paper next to the computer, we had the non-emergency police line also, so that if it was like a, you know, you're kind of not sure, it's not like maybe there's just somebody in the parking lot that's like little, you know, you're just not sure what's going on. It's not an emergency. That was another, I don't know, we just added that as a something that could help our staff if they needed it. So
Lieutenant Leslie salutes you. She would say that is a great, great tip.
thanks.
And to that point, the tornadoes also makes me think, I brought this up months ago because we had this happen to a client this year where fire drills, their studio literally burned to the ground. And because the owner, because they're in an old building, had the foresight to have fire drills, everybody, when the fire broke, it actually broke out in the building. It was an old building that was divided and had been smoldering for hours and hours. They determined it broke out. It started in the early mornings, but it gained momentum, and then it just like fires often do. It goes whoa, right. And then that moment, it went into the studio, and because it happened, everybody knew what to do. and nobody panicked because they knew exactly what to do. And to the point that it was as bad as this. The teacher with people wanted to go get their things. They're like, no, leave the building now. Out in the streets in January, in the cold, and it was a hot studio, in their no shoes, in their yoga outfits. But the teacher knew immediate was like, there's no getting your stuff. You
Yeah.
leave the building now. And I think that I get really passionate about this one because, it's horrific. Fortunately, nobody died. Thankfully, nobody died. But her business, and I call her the 90 Wonder because 98 later, she had opened up in a new space.
Yeah,
That's
and just that
perseverance. That's grit,
I
determination, and perseverance. Yeah.
I what I like about that story too is that detail. Having done like industrial first aid and used to own a scuba business and train people that way and been in like remote isolation work situations for emergencies and stuff. It's one of the things that you learn in the times I've been in really intense situations. It doesn't seem like it because time is strange and shock does a weird thing to people. But like, if you haven't practiced it, if you don't have the protocol and you don't have the clarity piece that you're talking about, like, no, you don't go get your stuff. There's smoke in this building. Get the fuck out. That's the difference between it becoming a real emergency and it being like no big deal at all. And that's, I think, the part that can be confusing in those scenarios. But this ties to even just your basic, how do I respond to this phone call? It's like you gotta think through those scenarios, write it down, train the person on it, practice it. Like that's just how it works. These are just the extreme versions of it you might not think about, these more emergency scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, we have a laminated emergency SOP at the desk with our address on it, with everybody's phone number on it, with the name of the police. I mean, we're right next to a fire station, luckily. But yeah, having that accessible and not buried in a desk. No comment on that further.
I think too, the underestimated power of these things is how impactful this is, like in ways you don't think about. So if you train your whole team on specific emergency scenarios in your business and you get them all CPR trained and they understand what to do. Like I'll give the example of a hot yoga studio. One controversial take is there's no governing body of what even is hot yoga, how much heat, what to do. If I went to this teacher training versus that, how much did I learn how to deal with the heat, understand the differential, what's happening in the body you're teaching in that, or how to see what's going on in a room with heat? Because like a 90 Fahrenheit room, like 35 degrees Celsius versus a 40 degrees Celsius, 105, is not even close to the same room. A 60-minute class, 75, 90-minute class, they're not even close to the same thing in terms of what's happening in the physiology. And so like, how do you know if someone's looking like they're not getting enough oxygen or they are actually dehydrating, which has not happened in that one class? The class has just shown it to them that they're already like that when they roll in. What happens if you have someone that was unbeknownst to you really diabetic and their blood sugar drops too low and they like actually go into diabetic shock or whatever it's called? Like what should you do? Like these are all scenarios that I'm just using the hot yoga world as the example, that if you train your team around that and then they feel more empowered because they know how to handle it, but also it's like a team bonding exercise. Like if I know that you know this too, and we all know how to handle this, and in that kind of intense situation, we're going to have each other's back and we know what to do and how to control it. We are very clear on who the boss of the situation is, et cetera, et cetera. Your business, in a roundabout way that you don't see, your business will get better. And so I think a lot of the time in the like service based businesses, there's a lot of effort for like team bonding. Let's go do this event thing together. Let's have a staff party. Let's talk about this, whatever else, which is all great. But we underestimate the power of these things that like you can also do that through training in your business. And these are, in my mind, like really simple, really good examples of what's on the table for you. Bring in someone to talk about fire drill protocol and CPR for a day. Bring in St. John's first aid and get everyone CPR certified and choking hazard certified. Like, because you have to, I don't know, probably not in your state or whatever, but like, why not? The cost to you is pretty low versus the benefit of it on all levels. But it's the team bonding piece and the like empowerment across the whole business that I think is underestimated with this stuff.
And a lot, at least in the US, a lot of fire departments will have like an outreach officer that this is exactly the type of thing that they do. So if you're listening to this and you want to do something fire protocol, is contact your local fire department and say, look, we would like to have a fire evacuation plan and we'd love you. And it's what your taxes pay for. That's why taxes aren't necessarily always a bad thing. It's what your taxes pay for. And same thing with like the police. They'll have a typically they'll have a community service officer if there's anything you want to bring. And I love the thought, Josh, about it. It can be a very powerful bonding experience when you do these type of things with the team. I think it really, and you actually practice them, it can really be a powerful thing. It is a team bonding experience because then actually, as Josh said, to the point I made earlier with my client, everybody knew what to do when that fire broke out. Right? There was definitely, they were very, definitely there was stress, definitely their anxiety level was up, but guess what wasn't there? Panic.
Yeah. Yeah, we always talk about, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so it doesn't matter what protocol we're talking about in the business. It's like, do you want your team to be a bunch of individuals who are confident in their job and their ability around it in a multitude of situations? And ideally, that's progressing in a positive direction where they're becoming more confident and more capable over time. Yes or yes? Yes. Oh, surprise. Do you want your team to work together as a team, even in intense situations like 80 people coming into your room at the same time with 60 leaving before, and then somebody in the lobby gets in a fight? Like, yep, sure do. And so create those scenarios and train to that direction. The simple idea of like, let's practice a fire drill sounds stupid, but not if you look at it through this lens of these are the things that, bind people together and make your whole team stronger and whatever. Same thing. One of the number one positive feedback pieces we get when we go to an on-site and train a sales team is this expression of afterwards, people's collective enthusiasm has shifted. Like, regardless of the specificity of them using this sales line or this or whatever else, it's like everyone on the team is now like up leveled because they're all trying to go the same way. They all have bought into the same thing. That's often the biggest difference, to the point that we've seen it in businesses where objectively, if we were to test, a couple individuals on a team's ability to sell something before and then afterwards, it's better, but not that much better. But the sales in the studio still double. And they're like, well, what is that? Because before they weren't even trying as a team. This wasn't even on their radar. Now everyone's rowing the boats in the same direction and they're all trying. And so, like, of course it's better. And so, yeah, any of these things, I think, are empowering that way.
And Josh, you just teed up brilliantly a segue to a next topic, which you didn't even know about. So thank you for that. It's your superpower. Is like we're talking about the training and performance and how everything rises up. That's one of the things we get from a on-site. Well, guess what, out there listening land? Today is July 2nd. We are officially in Q3. We are officially halfway through the year. So looking back on the first 6 months of the year, how are you doing towards your goals? And here's a pro tip. Do you even have goals? And if you don't, it's not too late to make some goals for the rest of this year. So are you on track, off track? What needs attention? Have you gone off, like you had these 2 or 3 goals, and now all of a sudden you're over here working on this thing that wasn't even on your radar? So because maybe some of the things that you need to do are a little bit harder and you're doing that bright, shiny object thing over here. Or you're like, you hadn't eaten the frog yet. You haven't read the book, Eat That Frog First. It's a great book, right? You haven't done the hard thing and you're doing all these other things because you're like, I don't know what to do, or I'm stalled. So on that, team, what do you think? Shannon, how are you doing on your goals? Bridget, how are you doing on your goals? Because you guys both still have active studios.
Dang. Okay, well, I set my goals at the summit last year, which I do every year. Highly recommend attending that as a studio owner. It provides a lot of clarity about where you're headed and which frogs you need to eat. Ew. Um, but yeah, I think I'm definitely, there have been some detours. A lot of the detours that I've experienced actually are sort of the foundational pieces of my business that need to be secured before I can then move on to something. I'm justifying my distraction here, but there are some things that needed to be put into place that weren't in place fully, and mostly it's around people. Mostly it's around HR, always around people. But I have hit a lot of the goals that I set for myself in terms of my monthly retail goal, which was part of my revenue strategy. Um, my first retreat is happening in August. Um, so things are progressing in the direction, and it's because I took the time to agonize over it at the summit. This is the first summit where I did not cry, which was really great.
Shannon,
No
you're not
crying.
giving a real great endorsement this summit. I agonized, I cried.
Well, it's the frog, right? I mean, you got to do the hard work, and it's really confrontational, and it really puts the focus on you as the business owner. Like, you're in charge once again. Like, your grandma's not gonna do it for you. So, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. But, my first one, I cried first day. Second one, I cried second day. Third one, I cried third day. By now I'm just like, oh yeah, I know that one. I know that's gonna come up, and I'm gonna have to deal with it. So. I do endorse it. Go. It's so much fun. And then you get to dance until 1 in the morning. It's just the best. At the boat, Carol's playlist. I need to shut up. Bye.
I think mid-year, one of the tricky parts when we talk about goal setting, like even the word goal, we use it interchangeably in our conversations or whatever, coaching and inside of Artha and at the summit. But it's not like in our official vocabulary of how we describe certain things. And there's a reason for it because it's like the idea of goal setting can have, or it has some like tripwires. There's like some fundamental issues. One being by looking at a goal, you're always looking at what you don't have. And by focusing on what you don't have, you actively push it away from you. On the other hand, you have to have, we use the word target when we talk about an annualized standpoint because you got to aim at something. Like the Arjun story, Eye of the Bird situation, where it's like, I give you a bow and arrow, and then we train so that you're the best bow and arrow shooter on the fucking planet. And I'm like, cool, now go shoot your arrow. And you say, where? Well, I don't know. Like, you need a target to shoot at. Otherwise, that skill is irrelevant. And so the goal matters, but only in setting the target, only in setting the direction. Mid-year, the hiccup is if we look at how have you progressed towards your goals and you are off track or on track for that matter, and it's been 6 months since you set the goal, so like maybe energetically, emotionally, you're in a different place and it doesn't feel as exciting, your enthusiasm has waned on the goal now, then you do this weird thing where you rationalize, accept, whatever, make excuses for how you aren't hitting your goal or what's happened or the reasons why it's been blocked or the reasons why it was the wrong goal that you set or et cetera, et cetera. Or if you're making headway towards the goal, that becomes the subconscious reason to like not really do anything else and not push the envelope to go further and increase the volume of your output, et cetera, et cetera. And so you end up changing the goal or like moving the goalposts of it. And it's not that there's no time or case for that ever. Of course, you can change your goals. But mid-year, I think the two things to look at are always like measuring progress matters more than measuring, and not progress to the goal, just progress in general. It's like, what do I have to show for something? It's not progress towards, did I make the $1 million I was planning to do this year? It's, I'm measuring the inputs. Did I progress in building the stuff that's necessary for me to be the business that makes the $1 million? This is the moment you measure that, because that's the true problem is if you're not on track for your goal, then what? Then you're like, oh no, we're not on track. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? The gut check is, I said this was the goal, and here's how I'm going to get there. Have I built the shit that I said I was going to get me there? Yes or no? That's the measurement. And so the progress measurement is on the inputs, not the outcome when you're mid-year, in my opinion, or that's generally more powerful. Part two, on a principle level, is maybe reaching the goal specifically isn't the most relevant part. Like there isn't success or failure. There's either you make it and you win, or you learn something and you win and get stronger. There's win or win if you're making this progress that we're talking about. And so if that's true, let go of the egotistical idea that I'm off track and maybe I should change the goal, or my goal was unrealistic, or that's too big of a stretch, or what was I thinking, or now this feels more important. What if it was like, there are no fucking choices? You set this goal, and if you don't make this goal, your legs are going to fall off of your body. And so there's no choice involved. What would you do? You're off track for the goal. You don't get to change the goal. What's the pivot? What would you do? You have to. There's no choice. Because suddenly things get a lot clearer when you start to look at it like that. Versus staying comfortable. Well, we're off track, but you know what? This is what we didn't expect, that this thing was going to happen and that person quit and I've had trouble with blah, 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 whatever. No judgment, by the way. Like we all do this as part of being an entrepreneur. But if you want to get really strong in your business, to me, mid-year goal setting, this is the key, is look at it and be like, yeah, we're off track for this goal. How the fuck are we going to, we still have to get it, or my legs fall off my body. My head explodes. The whole world crashes into the sun and all humanity ceases to exist permanently. How am I going to make this goal?
I'm
Start
like
there.
seriously bouncing up and down. You can see me because I have a perfect example of this, Josh. And it's the client we mentioned before, the one whose studio burned to the ground. They were at the summit last year, and we actually like to call our goals targets. And she had one singular target because went through a lot of stuff last year, rebranded, proverbially actually burnt the house down, not literally. Well, God, that was so prophetic. Oh my God. Anyway, did a lot of structure changes. And so her primary target was one thing, which was revenue. But a part of when we are at the summit, it's not just what the goal is what are the strategies, what are the specific things you're going to do to achieve that target? And so post fire, maybe, I don't know, a couple of months in, like this, it happened in January. So maybe like about mid-March, when sort of they were out of the state of shock, they were both the manager and the owner were lamenting the fact that they weren't, maybe not going to hit their revenue goal this year. And I said, wait, that doesn't matter. What matters are the strategies. We had goals for the strategies. It's like the strategy stayed the same. Improve conversion, improve retention. I said, nothing there has changed. So let's stay focused on what are we looking to achieve in terms of to get to that revenue goal you set. Nothing has changed. And it was like they had this like light bulb moment. They were like, oh, that makes sense. Because they were thinking there's no way we're going to hit the goal, and then thinking everything collapses. I'm like, no, we're still going to do A, B, C, D, because A, B, C, D is still going to get you towards that goal. And in fact, now they're really that helped energize them. That's the other thing about goals is when things are falling, when the world's falling down around you, that target and having the strategies, it can help you stay focused on getting there. Right. And so, and now they are hitting some of those benchmarks. Their conversions have improved. The desk staff is getting dialed in. And so rather than abandoning it, they actually dug deeper into that. So that's the other thing about having these targets too, is when you have those defined, even I have another client whose personal life is shit right now. Right. Shannon was all they call yesterday, but because she has these things defined, even though her personal life is a dumpster fire, she's still able to keep things aligned in the business. In fact, one of the strategies, I have to share this because I thought it was funny. She's hosting a retreat. She's just getting it launched. And I just said, you know what? You should lean into that. You should say as to why somebody should come, you say, and she's very photogenic. She's very good on camera. I said, you should lean into that. She said, oh, I look horrible. I can't. I said, no, you're perfect for doing this video. I said, you could start by saying, is your life a fucking dumpster fire? Well, so is mine. That's why I'm hosting this retreat this fall, so that all of us can get together, relax, renew, and feel better about the fact. And maybe we can even put out that dumpster fire at the same time.
We could polish this a bit, but I like the premise. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's another reason why having these targets and things like that. So you're not just doing the proverbial spaghetti against the wall and see what's sticking.
Yeah, again, when we say target, what are you aiming at, like to reverse engineer from that place. I think too, with you bringing this up, Terry, like hitting the third quarter, do you even have a system in place to be tracking? And the thing that's surprising to me with most small business owners is they don't. Like beyond just the fact that they're not tracking core KPIs, like trailing KPIs, they haven't even thought about measuring or tracking leading KPIs. And when we talk about goal setting, they don't have a system defined of just like, when do I even check in on my goals? Like you could look at progress towards a goal every week for the sake of talking. But is that valuable or is that stressful? You might actually stress yourself out. All you see is how you haven't made it to your goal or how maybe you're off track or whatever. But if I look at it every week, does that change my behavior in implementation of the strategy? If no, then I don't need to look at it every week. But like maybe I need to check every month to check for some major shift that I don't anticipate. But quarterly, I need to sit down for 2 hours and say, okay, now we're going to actually look at this. What have we accomplished? Are we on track or off track? No judgment, just like what is actually friggin' happening here? What's working, what's not? And just like recalibrate. You're not changing the whole thing. You don't have to change the whole strategy. You definitely don't change the goal, but you can just recalibrate and reprioritize some things. Just the idea that like go into your calendar and your Google Calendar or whatever for the next 5 years, schedule a quarterly goal setting and goal check-in meeting for yourself and your admin team. It's very easy to do. Obviously define what you're going to do in there, put it right in the calendar meeting or whatever, set up a reminder that tells you a month out, 2 weeks out, a day out, whatever. But like just that alone, even if you're like, I don't even know what I'm going to do on this goal meeting yet, Josh. Great. Doesn't matter. Just put it on the calendar and do it as the example. Or if right now we're mid-year and you're like, I don't know if I'm on track for my goals or not. Cool. That's the fun thing you get to do this week. Blow a whole day and just be like, all I'm doing today is I'm going to measure everything. I'm going to measure everything and just see where I am. Draw a picture on a piece of paper. Here's where I want to go. Here's where I started the year. Here's where we are. Like, take a look at it. That's it. I don't know how to do that. That's why I'm saying blow a whole day.
That's
It's
when I
okay.
hired my business coach.
Yeah,
Because
this is where
Yeah.
coaching can
it
be
was just
very
this
powerful.
time in I think it was 2017. Yeah, 2017, when I realized I was not on track to what I wanted to do. And that's when I hired my business coach. It was like,
Yeah.
I need help with this.
I think one of the things that is hard to articulate in the value of what it means to be a business coach and like why we use the word coach specifically instead of mentor, instead of consultant, instead of service, like it's very specific on purpose, is that if information is accessible and knowledge itself by itself is not powerful, it's just a component of power. It's knowledge plus action that's power. The value of a coach, we would say simplistically often, is accountability, but it's unraveling a confusing bundle of yarn. Here's all of the knowledge. You actually can see it all as the business owner. You even have the knowledge to do something with it. You even have powerful tools like we have with AI right now that you can go through to do the work in a more powerful way than ever. But you're like, where do I start? What's the priority? What's A, then B, then C? And that's the part that can be tricky. It's not even that you couldn't do it necessarily as an individual often, but when you own your business, like this is a coaching business that I own, and I have coaches that coach me on it because I'm too close to it. You need someone else that can look at it through a more objective viewpoint, not to tell you exactly what to do, but to help you unravel it. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle, like with coaching, that's more valuable than people realize, and that we as coaches are able to articulate sometimes. Right away, we jump on with the business, and like our most common cliche, it's like a total cliche at this point. We have videos about it, whatever. You jump on and you're gonna say to me, I want my business to do better. And we say, cool, what does that mean? Like, are you getting paid? Is it profitable? How much? How much better do you want it to get? How much money should it make? I don't really know. Like, I just want it better than this. So we don't have a goal. We're like, okay, well, why is it not there now? I think I just need more people in my business. Okay, well, what would tell you they need more people in your business? When we go through this whole process of auditing things, then we get deep into the audit, and what we realize is you got shit tons of people coming into your business, but your team is converting 30% of them to your first offer. Like, if we just fixed that thing, you would literally double your business overnight with no people through the doors. As soon as you see it, you can't unsee it, but that's what the coach can help you do. Could you discover that on your own by measuring your KPIs and et cetera, et cetera? Yes, of course you could. But also, as a business owner myself, having owned all sorts of different businesses, the comical part is that I can know that and I still just don't fucking do it until Carol comes and says, yeah, but what about this? We should look at that. And I'm like, of course we should, Josh, you idiot. And then I do it. You got to see some of my internal dialogue there. Everyone's like, yeah, been there. I'm not one for negative self-talk. I'm really trying to, like, with my kids especially, to really, I'm really on them about, be careful of your thoughts, be careful of your words. Like, these are the things that build your habits, that become your character, etc. And also comically, if I'm just being real, there's just the dark side of me where I just look in the mirror. I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing, you dumbass? Like, but as long as that spins into then I laugh and we go do the thing, no problem.
I think that's a wrap. Do you think it's a wrap, Carol?
Sure. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday and make sure you subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from. See you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Terry's. I have to go do KPIs. That's exactly what I need to go do KPIs for clients. So that's why
Okay,
I am dead with that ending. Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.